Welcome to Tales from the Tarot podcast, where you can learn about the tarot not from a book, but from people's lives. I'm your host, Tara, and I invite you to join me and my guests as we break down the human experience through story, myth, and archetypes. This episode's guest is my very dear friend, Stosh Loeser. Stosh is a spoken word poet who lives in Lexington, Kentucky. You can find her deepest work in her newsletter, Heart Spells, at heartspells.substack.com. So, Stosh, I welcome you. This is episode 2. And I think it's funny that we tend to connect on Tuesdays, and Tuesday is the day of Mars, like the planet Mars. So it's like you're an Aries and I'm a Scorpio. And I just love that about us. And I don't know, Tuesdays always feel so energetic for me. Like I'm trying to keep up with like this wave of energy. But yeah, so
I tend to have the most energy on Tuesdays too. So I like that we always have those talks as well.
awesome. So you chose the Strength card.
Mm-hmm.
And why did you choose the Strength card? Like what draws you to the Strength card?
Well, visually, I was going over this card yesterday and I just was so surprised by how soft the image is for being such, a strong card. Mm-hmm. And I love the playful energy between the woman and the lion. I really love her expression. Like she feels very peaceful and just in control. Um, and I love how the lion like almost looks submissive, like in the image. Like he's got his back up and his head kind of down, and he's got this like playful, his tongue's out, like it feels like the submissive energy with this beast. And I love the symbolism of her towering over the mountains in the background. I feel like I can relate to most all of the symbolism in the original, Rider Waite tarot deck card image, and the white gown, like just how angelic she feels to me.
Mm-hmm.
I resonate with the Strength card. Just my whole life has kind of called for me to take that role. And every time I do, the energy plays back with me and in union, and that feels interesting that I've finally learned this dynamic between me and using my strength as my advantage.
What do you think that role is? Like, if you could define that, or like as an archetype, like what is she?
So this answer just came to me. I feel like the word hands is the answer. Like she is the hands, like the way she even has her hands positioned on the lion's face, like the bottom of his jaw and the top of his head, like, and it doesn't feel constricting, for her to just have placement on his face. Like that to me feels like the role, like to be the hands of the thing working against me, but not in a way that's fighting or restrictive or controlling, just in a way that like I'm touching it. When I touch the thing that hurts, the trauma, the bad day, whatever, I feel like you're in a dance with it. So
And that reminds me so much of Aikido. When I was in college, I took an Aikido class. It's like martial arts, but the whole thing was about rolling, doing somersaults, and like doing all these kind of things where you're rolling with energy. You're like working with your enemy's energy
mm-hmm.
instead of against it. And yeah, it's pretty cool.
Yeah, her hands to me are what visually I'm drawn to the most. And that answer to me feels like it fits for your question, because and even in this moment I'm just realizing that I'm like, wow, she really just has her hands on the moment, on the thing that is the the meanest thing in the room or whatever, and they're in union with each other. Like there feels like a divinity between them. Doesn't feel like a fight.
You know what else is coming up for me hearing you is have you heard of the book Feeding Your Demons?
Oh, I think maybe you told me about this book, didn't you?
Maybe I did. It's by like a tantric Buddhist nun, I think, but it's
Yes. It's the red book.
yeah, I think I
Yeah.
might have shown it to you, but it's about how you can invite in your demons. Like it's like inviting a muddy dog in the house. And most people are like, no, I don't want that to come in, or like it's like inviting your demons in for tea. And then that you get to know them, you get intimate with them, and then they don't fuck with you anymore. Like they're not a problem anymore. You do that. So
Yeah, there's actually a lot of old Buddhist tantric teachers and Buddhist teachers, like Pema Chandra. I've read a few of her books, and she speaks on an old,
Hema Chodron.
yeah, tale of a person who goes up into a cave to like excavate or expel all these demons, and then they fight for days or weeks or however long, and then the only way to surrender the demons is, I don't even remember the full story, but something about how you just encompass it all and then you surrender to it. And
Yeah, you
it,
probably like you accept it. Like you
yes, yeah, instead of fighting it.
So tell us a tale of the strength card in your life.
Well, this one was, this is fun to think about because I'm like, wow, which tale should I tell? Which one do I pull out of the bag? But, really for me, the most recent experience I've had in having to use my strength as my advantage and as my strong armor is moving to a new city in the winter of COVID 2020 and in the midst of a really bad breakup and moving somewhere where I didn't know anybody and I didn't know it was just a lot of tragedies were kind of happening. And then living alone for the first time, it was like all these firsts kind of piled up on top of each other. And I can honestly say, I think the first year and a half wasn't easy whatsoever. And only recently has it started to feel like I can breathe through the experience. But I did rely a lot on my strength to just survive and get through each day. And I did that even in sometimes the worst looking ways, but I did. So
It's interesting to think about like the strength card is like the challenges. I like that you said survival because it's like those things that are naturally there challenging us. It's not like the things we're trying to make, like we're trying to challenge ourselves, but I feel like the strength card is like what's just coming up that we have to face, like and if
or just lean into like, and I like when you look at it in that perspective, like face versus lean into. And sometimes we use words and we don't think of the word that we're using. But yeah, I mean, when I changed the narrative on even as simple as a word, leaning into instead of facing something, it's like that's what this card embodies for me emotionally.
so much emotion in it in that lion.
Yeah, I agree.
It's like a roar. So the next question is, what movies or pop culture influences remind you of the strength archetype?
Hmm. Um, I think of Lady Gaga, oddly enough. Like,
Same.
and I don't think of like Lady Gaga as like Stephanie Germanato. I think of her as like her persona, Lady Gaga, or like Beyonce's persona of Sasha Fierce, like these like alter egos that we have to create, or that pop stars will create to like embody this character that they have to become for everybody. And um, yeah, that's probably who I think of. And then the movie that I kind of thought about was funny enough was Fight Club. And I thought, oh, is that like really brash and to be I guess frank, like parts of it could be, but it's the psychological aspect of Fight Club for me that always drew me into the book, not just the movie, but the book. And this like war with self and um fighting the ego and all of these things. I mean, that's what the movie and the book is all about.
That's awesome. It makes me want to watch Fight Club again. It's been so long since I've seen that. Okay. If strength were a person, what advice would she give you?
I tried thinking of this, and the only thing that kept coming up is something that I said to, I seem to be saying a lot to myself lately, but also saying in like people around me or to a date recently. Patience is a virtue, uh, which I don't know if it ties in with strength, but to me it does, because patience is one of the hardest things as an Aries, as like this like fiery human being who just reacts upon impulse, feels like a tornado sometimes, or a hurricane, or all the natural destructive things that can happen. uh Patience really is a virtue for somebody with strength, because strength can go one of two ways, right? It could go in that facing, that fight, the fear, the reactionary, or it could go into the leaning and the softness and the take your time. That requires a lot of strength too for somebody like me who is the opposite. So yeah, patience is a virtue.
I love that so much. Because like she is having compassion. And I feel like that's the patience is the self-compassion to be able to handle all that dark, all those the shadow work and the darker emotions and the, all that stuff. We have to have such self-compassion, such patience.
Yes. And that requires a lot of inner strength.
Okay, and then the last question, how do you feel about the zodiac sign Leo, which is the strength cards sign?
How do I feel about Leos?
Yeah.
I maybe they're my least favorite fire sign. I'm
Really?
privy to the Sagittariuses. I have lots of Sagittarius friends, and the Leos I've met, I will say this. You meet a Leo and they have like one of two personas, right? They have this like really robust personality, and they're like emotionally scary, or they're visually scary. They're like big, tall people, but they're emotionally like really soft. And then it's the opposite. Like the women Leos that I've met, they have these really like soft features, but these really like fiery, ferocious looking personalities or emotions. And it's always the, you know, one or the other. And at the heart of getting to know Leos closely, which I've gotten to do in the last 2 years with quite a few, which is strange, um, there's just this really deep softness inside of them that I think just isn't expressed, or isn't, there's not a space for it proper. Um, I do like Leos. I just think sometimes the more brash ones are the harder ones to like crack underneath.
Yeah, maybe like the softness is like the cat's meow, and then the brashness is like the roar.
Yeah. Yes.
I really like what you said a minute ago about how the Aries, he said the strength can go one of two ways. Like it can be reactionary or it can be more soft. That's really interesting to me.
Sometimes I'm the lion. And sometimes I'm the woman in white, like playing with the lion. And
Mm.
it's hard to like digest that I can be both on any given day. But yeah, it's such a beautiful card.
What do you think it means when you're the lion?
Ooh, I'm scary. Like, watch out. I'll say something, I'll look at you a specific way. Like my emotions are just not hidden. There's no guessing where I'm at emotionally.
Very primal, very raw.
Yes. Very real.
Your inner animal is expressing.
Yeah. And sometimes my inner animal is the playful side too, like going out and dancing, and uh being with friends, and being funny and being playful, and being like, I feel like my teenage self a lot lately. Sometimes when I get to go out and be around social settings more that I've let myself be in, and sometimes I'll go home and I'll be like, who was that? But then kind of take a moment back and I'm like, that's just somebody who doesn't get to play as much lately. I haven't gotten to play a lot in the last few years through all my grief work that I've been doing and all this really dark work that's come up in the last 2 years. And a lot of sadness has kind of been swirling. And so where the background is yellow, I feel that playful, fun, bright side of life coming back out again. And yeah, sometimes I don't even notice who my own playful energy is because it's different, but it also feels reminiscent of like my purest self back when I was a teenager with people. It just feels more mature now.
Yeah, and I like how the lion has his tongue sticking out, kind of playful.
Yes.
And then what do you think it means to embody the woman in white, the woman in the white gown?
I think the woman in white just kind of embodies like a clear reflection into like how you'll meet darkness or the scary thing or the hard thing or the thing that has the most resistance. The energy between her and the lion, like I keep saying the word the union, like it feels like a union between them. Like that feels devotional to have that relationship. And that's the secret sauce, because then you're not scared. You have full control. You embody all of it.
Yeah,
You
I
it
think
all.
that embodiment piece is so powerful because so many of us right now are living just from our head, and in our technology, and we've just totally lost touch with like the bottom half of our body even, and being in touch. Even just think about your feet. Do you ever think about your feet all day and just like grounding into the ground and like shaking? I've been doing tantric shaking in the mornings where like and sometimes I'll just put on lingerie because it's just awesome, and you feel it's good. It helps you tap into that erotic energy and to see yourself in that way, and just shake, and then your body starts to like actually be working with those emotions that you were talking about. It's just so cool how I think the strength card is actually connected to tantra too. So
Well, I love the shaking. I feel like in the wintertime I do more dance. Well, I've been doing a lot of dancing, period. I mean, this summer I went to a lot of shows and got to dance, but like in the wintertime, you're more inside. And I put on these like dance tunes there. I make these dance playlists. I made one called Shaking Out the Rug. And like, it's just like me shaking my body out, like anything to get everything moving and flying and flailing. And like, yeah, I mean, you have to this time of year.
I think people don't realize how the depth that they can take that. Like, I don't think people realize that you can actually get in touch with like really deep sadness or fear, or depending on what kind of music you choose, and like how you can actually really, you can be crying while you're dancing and moving stuff through. Really healing. Anything in your life where you feel like, any stories where you've embodied the strength card, or like in the workplace or in relationships or anything?
Oh, wow. I mean, of course, in every aspect. You know, I think my hardest strength story uh, is also the hardest one to talk about, just like very openly. But, losing my father when I was 15 was more traumatic than I realized in that moment. In that moment, I remember they brought us, I came home from school and they all showed up at the house, my grandparents, my aunt, the pastor, everybody. And they sat us down in the living room, me and my sister, and they told us that he had passed. And, my sister jumps up and she runs to his bedroom and like collapses on his bed, and she's hysterical, of course. And I just sit there on the couch, like stoic, emotionless, expressionless. And I could tell, and I don't know that I fully realized what I was doing in the moment, but I felt like I was saving my family by saving my emotions, like being the strong one. And it kind of continued like that for months. And I realized now all I was doing was just shutting down, but that was how I showed strength as a child, as a teenager in a really traumatic moment. And I think why it's so important for me now to do the embodiment work, to have the body expression expressing itself outwards is because of all these years of thinking that strength looked like holding it in. And maybe that comes from growing up in like a German family where emotions weren't super, I guess, acceptable. Um, and you didn't really see anybody else doing that either. But
You're putting the muzzle on the lion.
yeah, I was. And for me, you know, as a writer now, it feels necessary to, I wrote it in my newsletter recently, like I write because it's important to say the thing, to feel the thing, to get it out. And it's also important to me to have friends and people in my life that let me have that expression, that don't quiet that, a job where that's not stifled, hopefully. All areas of my life have to kind of give me space to be a human, and my human expression is necessary to have it come out vocally, sometimes as a roar, yes, of course, but I don't like it that way. You know, I'd rather it come out in a more melodic purr where everybody feels safe around it and invited by it. Like that is my goal each and every time, for sure. But I noticed that that gets stifled when I'm around people who can't do that themselves. And I haven't really had those interactions, honestly, in quite some time, because I have really good boundaries that I don't tolerate that.
Do you know that the strength card is considered the hero of the whole tarot? It's like the hero archetype. And it was interesting when you said stoic, because I thought, okay, that is kind of like a heroic thing, although it's not always necessarily good for you. You know, it's you're blocking some of your energy in that way, but it can also
Well,
be.
I think I've tried to be the hero too many times. And
Yeah,
now that I need to be the hero for myself. That's, you know,
yes.
that's where like playing in divine union is the my secret sauce with my strength. Like not, yeah, just being able to express myself outwards. I have to, or I just get too bottled up and then that explodes. That does no one any good.
Well, yeah, it can be heroic to unleash, and it can be heroic to hold it back. It just depends. It's like where you're at in life and what you need in that moment.
Mm-hmm. Oh, I really do love the mountains in the background too. You know, I love to hike, and her standing on this like really beautiful green pasture with these trees and these blue mountains in the background, but she towers over them. Like, I just feel like that feels so symbolic. You know, this last year I went hiking a lot alone, and in the past I've done some pretty spectacular hikes, and every time I do them, I feel so powerful.
Yeah.
Like my body feels powerful.
I mean, hiking is so energizing, isn't it? Like you get that fresh air and like, yeah,
Mhm.
it's amazing. So good for us.
Have you ever heard of the word on Danook?
No, what's that word?
So the other day on Thanksgiving, a friend says to me, "What is your on Danook?" And I said, "What's an on Danook?" And he says, "It's like an Indian word for the secret desire of the soul expressed out."
Ooh.
And so I had to write this word in my book. And like now I'm obsessed with the word. Now I'm obsessed with what is my on Danook? What is my secret desire of the soul expressed in this life outwards as a dream, you know? And now I'm ruminating on that. Like that's where all my inner strength is going to now, is where what my secret desire is for my life.
I love that it's secret.
Yes.
Especially like, only for you. It's like there's so much self-care, I feel like, in that, keeping something to yourself.
Yes. And I feel like I have, you know, I've been writing a lot again lately. I feel like I was going through this really bad low where there just wasn't. My friend was like, "You say you don't write, but you write every day." I'm like, "Yes, I do write every day, but there's a difference in writing and then writing for me as the writer. And you don't know what that means until you are it and you you understand as the creative, but like all these writings are kind of flying out now. And some of them I'm still not ready to share, but oh yes, it feels good when I ruminate on what my secret desires are and
You know,
saying things out loud again.
yeah, and I've never had put that together with, the strength archetype and writers, but that they go together so well now that I'm thinking about it, because it's all about that voice, the expression, and
Mm-hmm.
like letting it out. And a lot of writers are able to do that. They channel that deeper, they're able to say things in a way that maybe you can't speak it, but you can write it, and they give a voice to like the shadow, I think.
Yes. I never thought about it like that either. I went on a little date with a guy yesterday who has self-published his own novella. He gave me a coffee. It was very kind. He brought two copies to the States, and he gifted me one of the two. So, but we were talking about things, and he was talking about his passion for literature and cinema and music, and he even wrote that in his bio on the back of the book. And I said, I love that you put the word passion on there. I love that word. That's my favorite word. And he said, he speaks Spanish. He's like, oh, pasión. And I'm like, yes, passion. And passion to me also goes hand in hand with strength. And, thank, thankful to this friendship that you helped me get a piece published online this year, because it was my favorite thing I've ever written. And I feel like I will continue to say that for lifetimes. But the last line in the poem is, passion will make a sane person look crazy. And maybe this card also can go into that, because her passion for her strength, for the beast, for the scary thing, might look crazy to somebody else, her standing there with her hands around its head, but
Somebody who locks their inner animal out in a cage or
yeah,
won't connect with it,
yes,
divide themselves.
yeah. Well, and I love when the creative, the writer, the artist, whoever leans into the passion and makes themselves look the craziest, because, they're fueled by the most life force, happiness, on the nook, all the above. Like, they embody it all. So that's beautiful to me, to meet more people expressing themselves like that.
That's like, boom, podcast end right there.
I love the creatives. They inspire me to continue being more crazy, more passionate, more strong-minded, strong-willed, strong, expressive, like not to quiet my beast. And to trust that on the other side of that is this fairly angelic, peaceful being who has its hands on all of it.
Thanks for tuning in to Tales from the Tarot. If you'd like to support Stosh, you can join her Substack at heartspells.substack.com. Find more of my work at patreon.com/readings and rituals.